Smudge, it's obviously you've been at Hibs now for just over a year. I wanted to kind of take you back and talk about your whole career really, because you've kind of had periods in teams, periods out of teams. A lot of people are kind of looking at you thinking you probably enjoyed last season, one of the most or best seasons in your career today. Is that probably fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. You've hit the nail on the head. I think obviously everyone wants to play games as a goalkeeper. It's sometimes the hardest thing to do. But felt, when I came in, managed to help the team. Obviously it was a really successful season, both individually and collectively, and the rewards are certainly there for us this season to go and take. So yeah, in terms of enjoyment, football's all about moments, and I think there were just so many moments last season that I felt a real part of, and yeah, that just added to the enjoyment. So 100% in terms of it's definitely the most enjoyable part of my career so far. Hopefully there's more of them moments to come.
No, 100%. Well, we'll take you back then to the very start. Obviously, you started out at Nottingham Forest. What age did you join them, and what was that moment like? 'Cause it's a club close to where you were brought up.
Yeah, it's a great story, but I love telling it. But I'll keep it brief. Just that I played one season as a striker, just with friends in the league, and then went in goal for one game.
Right. Okay.
Literally that one game, and that's fortunately where a scout was. Came and watched, so got scouted as a goalkeeper for Forest as a 7-year-old.
Wow.
So that's why I love telling the kids who are interested in football that story. You never know who's watching at any of the time, so just always enjoy it, always try your best, because you never know what it might lead to. I mean, look at me now. I never would have called that after that one game in goal as a 7-year-old, but here we are. So it can lead to some fantastic stories.
Was there just not a keeper at your local team for that day, and you were like, oh, I'll just go in net?
Basically, yeah. I mean, my dad was always a goalkeeper, so it was one of them things where that was what I wanted to emulate. So I got a pair of gloves and went across to my local team and thought, yeah, I'll have a go in goal. And the manager sort of went, well, we've got a goalie, but we've not got a striker, so get yourself up front.
Right.
Okay. And then scored 4 that game. He's shouting on saying, you can bin them gloves, you're a striker now. So yeah, played all season up front, but then as you said, that one game, I think the goalkeeper was ill or injured, or maybe even just away on holiday, and it was like, who wants to go in goal? So I'm stood there like that. Manager's sort of trying to look round me going, literally anyone else, but I think it was something silly, like we needed a draw to win the league or whatever, and I played in goal, chucked myself in front of absolutely everything, drew 0-0 and won the league off the back of that, or something crazy. So yeah, that's how silly it is that it can start. But even there, great memories to look back on, sort of thing.
And from that point, from that one game in goal, you weren't like, nah, more fun scoring goals, or you just
no,
of like throwing yourself in front of the ball. Basically.
I mean, this is just it. Us goalies are crazy. There's no secret about that. I'm definitely in that club. There's something mentally wrong with us, but I love that. I love that we get looked at a little bit different. I think it definitely suits me. In terms of, like you say, you see a load of feet kicking about or whatever, he wants to go and chuck the way in front of it. But yeah. I think, back to like that Dundee United save last season where, you're going to get hurt, chuck yourself in front of it, and, I'm there willing. That's that kind of screw loose that you've got to have in the right way, that you're just going to do anything you can to help your team out. And apparently I've had that from a young age. So yeah, that's where it all started. And then, yeah, luckily enough, just kept getting contracts at Forest. They kept me on, managed to do my YT there, and then was really lucky in that there was some good opportunities to go out on loan at a really young age at non-league level, and I think that really stood me in good stead in terms of finding out an awful lot about myself, finding out an awful lot about the game. You sort of can get trapped in that bubble a little bit when you're in an academy of, we're really good under 18s team or what have you, but until you go and play against other people where that win is literally all that matters, and it can be the difference between people keeping jobs, people losing jobs, whatever it might be, that fine line, that's really where you learn a lot about yourself, your teammates, and where you kind of want this life to take you. So I was really lucky to get that sort of blooded into me really early, and that was kind of my first taste of success in adult football, really, and that definitely spurred me on to go, yeah, this is certainly what I want to do for life.
What was that like as a young lad? Because obviously as a 18, 19-year-old keeper, you're coming into a men's dressing room, like you say, everyone needs to win to potentially get a bonus or get paid. It really matters to them at that point. and then you're playing against probably 6 foot plus, big, strong, physical strikers that are launching, and teams are launching balls into the box. What was that like, and how much of a grounding was that for you?
Do you know what? It was perfect for me in terms of the first probably couple of months. It was just a baptism of fire. It was like, wow, what is this? Didn't look like I was floundering or anything. I don't think. You kind of have that level of professionalism where you know how to sort of manage yourself and what have you. But mentally, I'm half going, wow, this is sort of a different level, different world. But that was perfect, I think, because that's sort of that sink or swim, fight or flight scenario where you're going, okay, which way is this guy going to go? But as I said, like, I loved it. I just loved it. I loved that little bit of pressure. I loved that little bit of competition. I loved that it was, as you say, that bit of physicality. I think you learn an awful lot about yourself when you've got, as you say, 6 foot plus guys coming in with an elbow and what have you. You can either hide or you can stand up and be countered. And certainly think that's what I did. I was lucky enough. Well, I must have done all right, because that manager went a move slightly higher, still non-league in the Conference North at the time, and he took me again. So I was really lucky in them 2 years. I probably played over 100 games, as you say, before I was even 20 years old. So I sort of loved that. That sort of gave me, I think, a really good foundation of this is football. You've had that sort of early taste, and then it's a case of sort of finding out what level you can play at. Where can you find yourself? And I've said, previously that in England there's the academy bubble, and there's also that football pyramid bubble of, the Premier League obviously is the creme de la creme, but there's Championship, League One, League Two, all the way down, and the non-league levels sort of filter down so far, and you're just sort of thinking, where do I fit in that? So I'm sure we'll come on to this in a minute, but I loved finding the Scottish game. I think it's been absolutely fantastic for me personally, and it sort of opened my eyes to the levels and what can be achieved up here.
I was going to say, like, at Nottingham Forest, before I kind of talk about you making your debut there, throughout your time at the club, you went on kind of numerous, like, different loan spells, playing for some teams, like as backup number 2 for others. What was that like for you in those periods where you kind of bouncing around from team to team?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think, every day's a school day. You've always got an opportunity to learn, and I think I like to think although I'm a bit crazy, I like to think I'm quite switched on. I like to think that you can learn something from any sort of given situation and scenario, and certainly other people. So I kind of look at it in positive light, that I had the chance to work with a lot of different people and sort of pick out the best bits from each. So I quite like that. I had that opportunity to do that. But as you say, as I started this interview saying, there's one position as a goalkeeper. I think it's the hardest because there's the most pressure, there's the most scrutiny and what have you. And I do enjoy that, but also there's so many goalkeepers out there wanting to play, willing to play. And also ultimately we get judged on the mistakes we make, and the mistakes we make can lead to goals, and then that's when people start questioning and asking for changes and stuff. So it's really difficult, but all the things that you've done previously kind of give you that armoury, give you the tools to answer any question that sort of gets thrown your way. And I think if you're clued up enough to that, then you kind of have the ability to come up with those answers really then. And I think that's kind of the best way I can think to describe it, that playing games is great, and ultimately it's what everyone judges you on, and it's what everyone wants to do. However, there's so many more opportunities to learn. There's, I've worked with some fantastic goalkeepers. I mean, Dean Henderson sort of speaks for itself. Even when I was younger, I got the chance to work with like Lee Camp, Doris de Vries, Carl Darlow, great goalkeepers in their own right. And I was, as I say, I was fortunate enough to work with them, watch them closely day in, day out, and go, is that something I can add to my game? Is that something I can try? Do I like it? If it doesn't work, leave it. But, if you just sort of go through the motions every day, then you kind of don't come up with that sort of ability. So, kind of forgot what the first question was. Went off on a tangent there, but yeah.
But I guess that's the beauty of the kind of goalkeepers union, isn't it, to a certain degree? Because if you're like tight knit as a group, then whilst there is that competition for the number 1 spot, you're still learning and taking bits from each other and then pushing each other. So, like, for example, when you weren't playing, let's say at Nottingham Forest, if you were doing everything you could to push a kind of Carl Darlow or Dean Henderson, then you know you're still impacting the team.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a massive advocate of the goalkeepers union. It sounds really silly, but you know, we're in each other's pockets. We see each other from the first minute to the last minute when we leave every day. So of course there's healthy competition within that, but I think because we spend so much time together, if you're not doing your best, ultimately you're doing yourself a disservice and the other members of the group, because you know everyone's sort of on the different journey, on the different path, and you know there is that sort of playing hierarchy or what have you. But you know, as you said, it's about you know, the number 3 pushing the number 2, the number 2 pushing the number 1, and we don't even necessarily look at it like there's a 1, 2 or a 3. It's just you need to make sure you're in the best position to go and play at any given moment, because you never know when something's going to happen, whether it be injury, suspension, whatever. You just need to be mentally and physically in the best shape possible, ready to go, ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah, and obviously Nottingham Forest, like you said, you got scouted when you were 7 years old. What was that like then to progress through and then make your first team debut and go on to make a string of kind of appearances, especially over kind of 2 seasons, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think I played nearly 50 games in one run over the span of 2 seasons. Honestly, it was a really proud moment, as silly as that sounds. I think, like you say, because I started as a 7-year-old, you know, and went all that way through, I think it was just sort of the payoff kind of for the hard work that went into it, you know, that a lot of people don't see. You know, really thankful to, you know, all my family, mum, dad, brothers. Brothers, I've only got one. That shows you how tough our session was this morning. You know, really good support network in that, you know, I was training 3-4 times a week from 7-8 years old. So there was an awful lot of work that went into it. And as I said before, from an early age, I decided that this is what I want to do. So yeah, to go all that way through and then, you know, to make my debut, that was kind of an insane moment. You know, not the tallest of goalkeepers anyway, but you feel like you're 6'5" and your chest comes out. You know, it's amazing being on that pitch, and I really enjoyed playing in front of the fans at the City Ground. You know, there's some really special moments in that. And you know, would I love to have played more? Yes, of course. But again, you know, it sort of gave me an opportunity to work with a lot of different professionals, and I'd like to think that I sort of did my little bit on the way to the success that they're achieving now. And you know, it's always the second result I look out for after we finished our match. It's obviously a club that's close to my heart. You know, I was there 20 years, so it's not something that just goes away overnight. So yeah, just an immense sense of pride, really, like I say, in terms of a payoff for the hard work, but also, you know, it was sort of my local team. I've got an awful lot of family who are, you know, Forest fans, and I had the ability to ball boy for them when I was a young kid, so that was where I spent an awful lot of time and sort of was a fan growing up, and you know, it's every child's dream, isn't it, really?
How hard was that decision then, after being there for so long, when you've got such a kind of connection to the club because of the time you've been there, but through family and friends, to make that decision to move, to try something different?
Yeah, it's difficult in the sense of it was all I ever knew. However, probably the decision was taken out of my hands a little bit. I'd probably been there a little bit too long and not done enough in terms of playing games and what have you. But it was probably the kick up the backside I needed, shall we say. It sort of just pushed me out my comfort zone a little bit and was like, okay, go on, find your level, go and find, you know, where you stand in the real world. And it probably led to a couple of really difficult summers, if I'm honest, in the end, because I'd been there for so long and not played, and that's what you are judged on. There wasn't an awful lot of offers and you know, teams coming in for me, and so I was very fortunate then that I'd worked with Nick Colgan before, who's obviously Hibs hero in his own right, and he was at Stockport at the time, so he'd seen how I worked in training. You know, I'm really thankful to him, obviously, but I'd like to think that he saw my sort of ethic and what I was about, and he was quite happy to take me at Stockport, where again I worked with another fantastic goalkeeper in Ben Hinchliffe, who, you know, got the Golden Glove the year we got promoted. So I sort of tasted success in another different route, but you know, didn't play any games in League Two, and then that was only a 1-year contract. So after that, again, another difficult summer, and you know, fortunately, you know, Marshy got on the phone and said things were moving a bit here. Would I be interested? And obviously it was an opportunity she just certainly can't turn down. Not from necessarily the situation I was in, but just in general. I you know, certainly think Hibs is a massive football club, and I'd like to think that, you know, we're sort of showing that now in terms of we got the results, we got that 3rd place. We probably turned a couple of heads with performances last season, certainly how strong we finished the season, and we've probably got that expectation on our shoulders now of, you know, can we kick on, can we be even better, or certainly can we at least do what we did again, and that's the challenge, and certainly one I'm looking forward to.
I suppose from a football perspective, when you're kind of looking for a new club, when Hibs come calling, it makes complete sense. But I'm interested in terms of like family life and location. That must have been a real decision. Again, not to labour on the fact, but you're obviously at Forest for 20 years. You kind of, I would imagine, have a house down there. Your family was settled. Then obviously moving to Stockport. It's not too far away geographically, really, where you're probably able to travel.
Yeah.
Then moving to Scotland and Edinburgh is a huge jump for you and your family.
Yeah, it was again, it was a little bit scary in that, you know, you're not going to get much further away from home, as you say. You know, I've got a house down there. I was lucky enough I'd never had to move, so, you know, I've been there for 7 years. Got the wife, fortunate enough to have 2 beautiful kids now, one son, one daughter. So yeah, it was massive in terms of, you know, I kind of knew in the back of my mind I need to go and do this. I need to go and do this for myself. Selfishly, it was for myself. However, you know, I'm so blessed that, you know, they are right behind me every step of the way, and that's why, you know, at the end of the season I loved it, because they get to come out on the pitch with us, and ultimately they're what I do it for. Massive on family. So they backed me the whole way, and I'm really thankful and grateful for that, because, you know, we moved up, we made a real go of it, bought a house up here, and I can honestly say we've never been happier. I think, you know, the kids are absolutely loving it. They're thriving up in Scotland. Mrs. loves the location. I mean, it's an easy place to live, Edinburgh. It's a fantastic place to live. Let's make no bones about that. So that certainly made it easier. But yeah, it was a bit of a blind leap of faith, but certainly thankful for doing it, because I certainly think it's paid off.
100%. And then obviously last year you came in and you were challenging for that number 1 spot with Joe Bursic. Obviously then David Gray made the call to kind of bring you into the starting lineup for the Aberdeen game. What was that like for you in the build-up to the game? Were you thinking like, this is my real opportunity to show what I'm about? What's your mental state like in that moment?
Yeah, listen, I'll be brutally honest, I was scared. I'd not played for a long time. You know, since day one when I came in last season, I just, you know, worked really hard, and as I said before, just tried to make sure I was ready. I'd like to think, you know, that the gaffer made that call ultimately because I'd, you know, done really well in training and sort of put enough confidence in his mind that if he thought he needed to make a change, he could trust me, and luckily, you know, he did. But yeah, that Aberdeen game, again, talk about baptism of fire. Wow, that certainly was one. That was a hell of a game for a neutral, but not all that nice to be involved in. Kind of the infamous 3-3, but luckily, you know, we kind of turned it into a positive result in the end after it looking bleak late on, and then obviously the turnaround after that is incredible and speaks for itself. But yeah, honestly, there was a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety, you know, a few nerves, which is all natural really. Probably put a little bit too much pressure on myself in terms of this needs to work. Like I need to have a good game, I need to prove myself, which, to be honest, is kind of the opposite of me. I kind of like to go under the radar, you know, and to be honest, Craig Sampson was brilliant with that. You know, he gave me the call the night before that the gaffer was going to change it, sort of talked me down off that ledge in terms of, you know, you don't need to prove anything, just go about your business, we know what you can do, just look after yourself. And then as the weeks went on and the results turned more and more positive, and I sort of grew into that role, that's when we started working on, okay, right, you know, you're not just looking after yourself now, what can you do to help this team, elevate this team, and help us win more games. And you know, that was a process that kind of happened really nicely in the end, in terms of, you know, helped to get a few points on the board. Like to think I was a good part of the group in terms of communication, a little bit of leadership, alongside many others, and I think that's what brought us that success.
Did you just, from that first game, just grow in confidence week in, week out? And did you notice yourself actually almost believing in yourself more?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I remember that night, every time they got on the attack, it felt like everything was 100 miles an hour. And you sort of second guess yourself a little bit. But then, yeah, as you say, you get into it. As a goalkeeper, you do need games in terms of you find your feet with, crosses and through balls, I think are really difficult things to replicate in training. But, it's the movements of other people, that awareness, that sharpness. And as you say, as the weeks went by, I sort of grew into it a little bit more, felt a lot more like myself, realised, okay, I'm doing okay here. How can I do even better? And yeah, I mean, I loved it. I loved it in the end, and it's probably because of the way that we finished and the rewards that we had. But yeah, no, you're certainly right in terms of, yeah, I grew into that role in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and it turned into be a real special season, and I suppose for you as well, becoming almost a fan's favourite throughout the back end of the year. That must mean a lot for you when you actually think back about the rest of your career.
Yeah, honestly, I'm so thankful to the fans. I think they've made it really easy for me to make the transition, like you say, in terms of moving up here, because they've, honestly, they're fantastic. Every time I hear, my song, here's Stand Up on the back, you get them goosebumps when you realise it's you they're singing about. And that's why I'll always make a point of going as close as I can to them at the end, giving them the fist pumps and the claps, because as much as family's what I do it for, they're what we do it for as well. It's not lost on me that they're who we represent in terms of, like, of course the results, but like the performances as well. And I think what I love about the Hibs fans is if you show you're doing your best and like you wear the badge with pride, they'll get right behind you, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and you talked about family. It'd be remiss of me to do this interview and not mention your mum, who's arguably more famous than you at the moment.
It's not arguable. She is 100% more famous than I am. It's not a debate.
But she came up and she felt immediately at home as well. That kind of family feel at the club must be important to you as well, obviously being such a family man.
Yeah, it's special. It is special. I think the relationship that we have with the fans and that we're allowed to have with the fans is remarkable, really. But yeah, it's really special to me because Mum was another one. She's back down the road. She found it quite hard, when we were leaving. Probably I think she's going to miss the grandkids more than me, but there we go. But no, so she loves it. Social media can be a great thing, and that's certainly shown itself in a good light in terms of she can, communicate with the fans in a good way, and she really likes it. So when she managed to come up, I think she had a meet and greet. I think she told me to drop her off early because she had some people she wanted to meet.
Bar,
yeah. So that was fantastic. But no, she loved it. So that's really special for me that people, made a bit of a fuss of her, and yeah, it's just that feel-good factor. It's what you want. That's what puts smiles on people's faces, and that's really special. And I'm really thankful for that.
Excellent. Well, I won't keep you too much longer, but I just wanted to touch upon the season that's coming up. Obviously, Rafael Salinger's joined the club and joined the group, being essentially number one last year. I'm interested when a new goalkeeper comes in, what that's like for you and how you kind of welcome them into the kind of goalkeepers union at the club.
Yeah, as I said, I'm a massive advocate for it. So, we were always going to sign a goalkeeper this summer. So I'd like to think I've made him feel welcome straight away. He's a good part of the group. His work ethic's, spot on. He seems really professional, really easy to get on with. Questions are always going to be asked. And as I said, you're only ever, 1 or 2 mistakes away from being changed. So it's not something I think you can get too in your own head about. Yeah. If I'm being perfectly honest, it's above my pay grade. It's a decision for Sammy and the gaffer to make. But no, as I said before, the way I sort of worked my way in was hard work, dedication to the cause, and then a willingness to do whatever it took when I managed to get the gloves and get the shirt. So I'll be honest, all it's going to be from me is more of the same. Yeah. And if I can show that even more, then I certainly will do. But no, just nothing but welcome to Raf. He's, as I said, he's got all the attributes, and seems a really, really decent signing. And we're going to have more games this year, hopefully. We'll certainly want to be a bigger part of Europe than what we've got so far. So if that runs deep, then we're going to need bodies and quality, and he seems to have all the qualities that we require. So happy to have him, and as I say, looking forward to working with him, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, well, that's a nice segue actually to the European stuff that I wanted to talk about. FC Midtjylland, obviously Europa League qualifier. That's something firstly that makes Scottish football so special, isn't it? The route into Europe, the chance to play against these teams and to play on the big stage.
Yeah, 100%. As I said before, it's not something that you necessarily think about straight away, but then when we start getting the results and you start thinking about it towards the latter part of last season, and you're going, crikey, we could get in. Yeah, what a great opportunity. It's certainly never something that I thought I would have. There's a lot of Premier League players who's got unbelievable quality. I mean, you think about, we had Dwight last season. European football wasn't something he experienced. So I think the best way that I can think to describe it is we have given ourselves the platform, and ultimately now it's up to us to go and show what we're about. And we want to run deep into the competition. I'm not going to make any secrets about that. It'd be silly of me to stand here and say, we don't mind if we get beat. Obviously, that's certainly not the mindset that we've got under the manager at the moment. Of course, we want to win every game, but we also probably have a bit of a realism about us as well. But no, I certainly don't think that there's anything that stands in our own way except ourselves. So, we're here in Holland, gonna have a good week, work hard in pre-season, and then make sure we're fit. Yeah, we're prepped, we're ready to go, and try our best to win that game, tie over 2 legs.
Yeah, just finally then, how excited are you ahead of the new campaign, European football, and obviously the momentum coming off the back of what was an excellent season in the end last year?
Yeah, I mean, the wife's going to hate me because I was chomping at the bit to get back. I mean, I obviously really enjoyed my summer. Downtime's really important, and it was fantastic to relax and what have you. But yeah, I was chomping at the bit to get back. I think there's always that new buzz, there's always that new feel around a new season, and everyone's excited, rearing to go. But yeah, just with that buzz, like you say, the European tie to be played as well, and see where we can go in that. I just think, let's have it.
Absolutely, great way to end it. Smudge, thank you very much.
Top man, thank you, pal.